Picture this. It's WrestleMania. The biggest, most over babyface in the land has won the main event, won the championship, and the show goes off the air with him celebrating in the ring with the title. And then, less than 24 hours later, Monday Night Raw opens with the announcement that the match's result has been completely reversed and the title has gone back to the heel champion. Said face doesn't even get credit for even winning the title. If that happened today, there might be thousands of angry smarks storming Stamford, Connecticut with torches and pitchforks. Well, guess what? Back in 1985, that's exactly what that other wrestling company just did. Starrcade was WrestleMania before WrestleMania. If groups like World Class had started the practice of a major supercard show, Jim Crockett Promotions in the Carolinas took it to the next level with the concept of broadcasting such a super show to the entire country through what was then known as closed-circuit TV. People would show up at movie theaters or even arenas and lay down $15 to see events like Muhammad Ali prize fights, Evel Knievel's infamous Snake River Canyon jump, and eventually wrestling events like Starrcade, which is what inspired Vince McMahon to create WrestleMania. A lot of people today might not know how much of a gamble the first WrestleMania was. Vince was only able to even finance the event by selling off the Georgia territory to Jim Crockett after he'd bought it from the Briscoe brothers, and he only did that after Ted Turner threatened to sue him to get him off his TV networks after the infamous Black Saturday debacle. And even then, it took incidents like Hulk Hogan almost killing Richard Belzer with a chokehold on Belzer's talk show to generate enough publicity for people to tune in. But they did, and the inaugural WrestleMania managed to generate a $4 million profit for McMahon, an unheard of sum for wrestling back in 1985. So, with the Federation having clearly marched onto Jim Crockett's territory, you would think they would look to put the absolute best show possible on when Starrcade was to air less than 7 months later. What made it worse was they had the absolute perfect talent to counteract it, and they proceeded to drop the ball at the goal line. That's a football term, right? With Crockett and the NWA telling the Von Erichs to go kick rocks, they turned to making their biggest rivalry being Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes. Flair was their undisputed heel champion. He wore flashy robes to the ring and flaunted his vast wealth and party-hard lifestyle. Rhodes, meanwhile, was the man for the working class. Billed as the son of a Texas plumber who got his first paycheck digging ditches, yeah, who knows how much truth there was to that. He was the American dream. The avatar for the paunch-bellied blue-collar everyman. Even though in reality, he lived in the same rich suburbs as Dallas Cowboys players and was ringing up just as big a limo and private plane bill as Flair. Regardless, Dusty was the guy always looking to dethrone the champion and reach that vaunted mountaintop. Only he seemingly could never make it there against Flair, thanks largely to a particular type of screwjob finish. And oh boy, are you about to see that type of finish here in spades! Let's get started with the main event of Starrcade 1985.
Ladies and gentlemen, the main event of Starrcade 85. The main event for the World Heavyweight Wrestling title. One fall, 60-minute time limit.
I always laugh at how these old matches had a time limit announced when everyone involved knew the match wasn't going to last close to that long. We get a minute or so of Dusty punching and slapping Flair around until he knocks him out of the ring. But then everything goes back to a snail's pace. This is why I roll my eyes at the claims that Ted Turner's Southern audience hated Vince McMahon's style because there wasn't enough action. This is action to old school wrestling fans? This is about as poorly paced as 2016 baseball. Okay, dude, how many of these other sports references are you gonna shoehorn into my script? Okay, maybe some of the earlier matches were quicker paced, but this is the main event! This is supposed to be the most exciting stage of everything! For thug's sake! Even the Attitude Era's main events, with a Stone Cold Steve Austin who was very limited in his moves because of his neck injuries, still kept up the audience attention better than this! It doesn't help that the announcers are silent for way too much of this match, making it seem like they're just as bored at this as anyone. Have you ever watched wrestling or any sporting event on TV with no announcers? Trust me, after enduring enough of this, you'll never complain about Michael Cole again. I'm just gonna jump ahead before I fall into a coma. A bloodied Flair puts in the figure 4 at around the 20-minute mark. I thought wrestlers didn't use the same moves every show back in those days. But Dusty eventually breaks free, and then the big turn comes when a Flair kickout tosses Dusty onto the referee, who is eventually knocked out of the ring. How convenient that they have a spotlight ready to show where the ref has landed. It's almost like that's going to play a factor in something. Dusty goes to the figure 4, but then come in Flair's old buddies Arn and Ole Anderson to try and take out Dusty. Seriously, it's like I'm watching a WWE main event from 1998 to 2002. And yeah, remember this spot because it's important. Another referee comes in, but Dusty kicks out before the 3 count, and soon after, Dusty is able to roll up Flair and get the 1, 2, 3 and the pin. Yep, biggest show for the company, and it ends on the NWA's favorite finisher, the small package. Huzzah! But yeah, that's the end of the match. Dusty is declared the World Heavyweight Champion. He gets picked up by all of his buddies, who includes superstar Billy Graham of all people. And the show goes off the air with Dusty Rhodes in the locker room celebrating with the classic NWA World Championship belt. And guess what all of this amounted to? Come on, guys, you're never this late on the switch with Rowdy!
Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
2 days after Starrcade, the NWA announces that the decision of the main event had been changed. That due to the Andersons' interference, even though there was no ref in the ring to call it at the time, it was officially a Dusty Rhodes win by disqualification. Meaning, of course, that Flair keeps the belt, since the title can't change hands on a DQ. All of that pomp and celebration at the end, and it was all for 2 things.
Jack and shit. And Jack left town.
And do you want to know the capper for all of this? The head booking agent for the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions, who had the gall to screw over Dusty Rhodes with a call like this, was Dusty Rhodes! This type of screwjob finish had been used in wrestling for years, with many attributing its creation to Eddie Graham when he was in the AWA, and even Hulk Hogan himself was screwed out of the AWA title at least twice using this exact twist. But Dusty Rhodes became so in love with using it over and over again that it has become known as the Dusty Finish. It became Rhodes' go-to move to try and keep Flair happy by letting him retain the belt, while he continued to get sympathy from the fans by always getting the Raw deal in the end. As I said, the finish had been used many times over the years with variations. The most common version was having someone get thrown off the top rope and out of the ring, because back then that was illegal and grounds for disqualification. I remember a show back at the Super Pit in Denton, Texas, where Kevin Von Erich looked to have beaten Flair for the title, but had it reversed on just such a decision. But even then, the reversal was announced at the event just seconds after the bell was rung. This was just the most blatantly awful way to use such a screw job, because every single person who left the Omni in Atlanta or whatever theater they were watching the closed circuit broadcast on went to bed believing they had seen their hero win the title, only to have to wait as much as 48 hours to be told, nope, none of what you saw mattered. True, WrestleMania 4 had its own shenanigans, as Vince McMahon had to change up the main event, due largely to the honky-tonk man holding the Intercontinental title hostage, but even then he was able to make something good out of it by creating the Mega Powers. This was just a decision that no good could have come from, and it's not surprising that both Jim Crockett and the NWA were headed downhill. Dusty would finally win the belt in 1986, what was actually his third time to hold the title, but like so many before him, was made to drop it back to Flair just a couple weeks later. It was soon after that when Jim Crockett's financial perils forced him to sell the whole operation to Ted Turner, and Rhodes was let go right after that, leading him going to Vince McMahon and the infamous polka dot suit wearing era that no one likes to talk about. Though Dusty would say years later that was when he had the most fun, because under Vince he never had to be involved with booking politics. He would eventually return to what was by then called WCW, and let's just say what happened with him and Flair then could cover a whole other video. But yes, Starrcade 85 was one big cluster crap dragged down by egos and backstage politics, forcing a convoluted finish that made no one happy. And it still wasn't the worst case ever of such a debacle. When we return, we'll finally get into the worst wrestling show ever.